Okay, all right, that should be good. Let's check the sound. Okay. Okay, so for those of you in the computer lab, I know that you got other things to focus on at the moment, design and... Alright, so today there's no workshop. I just want to highlight what's busy happening with Format and explain the implications it will have for the year. Okay, so we just need to be... a lot has changed in the respect of how Format will work, access to Format, etc., etc. So I think before we go any further, I just want to explain what's happened with Format and what's going to happen going forward. If you've already got a license, there's some things you just need to be aware of. Okay, so I'm just going to go and open up a page and explain what's going on. Okay, so basically, before we get into the content, if we go to Format's website, Autodesk Format, I was aware that this would have taken place, but unfortunately this was not communicated that well from their side. If you go to the Format page, you'll see that there was a blog post, and if you go right down to the bottom, it explains that Format would have been maintained until 2027 and then phased into Forma. So this is what they had communicated to us, and we were under the assumption that Format would last up until then, which was plenty of time to transition. However, if you read the next line, if you have a standalone Format Pro license, your access to Format for Windows will be terminated at the end of the contract year in April 2024. But that didn't happen last year. Everyone else still could get their licenses online, which a lot of you did in the beginning of this year. However, at the end of March, they removed this off the student educational, so you can no longer license Autodesk Pro that you download from their website. It also stated that Format for iPad and Format for Web will also be removed in August the 31st, 2024. However, that is still active as well. So at the moment it's very conflicting, but what I have realized is that if you go and download Format Pro off this website, so let me just go back to Autodesk Format Pro. If you download the web version, the application that you install on your computer, it will install, but you can't use it because it's requiring a license. Now you can't get a license off the Autodesk website anymore. Okay. However, I have noticed that the Format for Web app still functions without the Pro license. So the web version still works. So for those of you that have downloaded it on your machine, you'll probably find at the end of this year, it will work up until the end of this year, and then it will work no more. So you'll either have to use the web version. Okay. Now, I think a lot of you have got used to this workflow, the tools. But what is interesting is they've migrated all of these tools into Forma. So if we go to Autodesk, I just want to highlight this. In Autodesk Forma, I've got my hub available, so let me just sign in. Leave the site, hopefully should have just signed me in. Starting April, we'll gradually rolling out one-time passwords. Okay. Right, I just need to switch off my Karnak, otherwise you'll get my passwords. And let's just get rid of that, exit that for now. Cool. So, what's happened instead? All of these tools have been transformed or transferred into Forma. Now, Forma is a great tool if you're doing if you're doing site analysis and urban analysis, etc., etc. But it's not that great if you're just doing small residential, if you're doing a building. So if you're doing a building, these tools are not going to work for you anymore, okay? Because this is designed to do modeling on an urban scale site or massing of a site. So basically, all of these tools now have been built into the sketch tools, and you'll notice they don't quite look the same. But if you start expanding these tools, you'll notice all of these tools are from Formit. Okay, it's all been built into Forma, but this is more of an urban tool than a small detail or modeling tool that we're all familiar with. Okay, so it has changed quite dramatically. All right, so what I would like everyone to do, I've got a bit of work to do on my side. I had a whole series of workshops pre-built that you would do in Formit. You'll model some timber details, and then you pull it into Revit and ArchiCAD, and then you document those details in ArchiCAD or Revit. Okay, because modeling these types of details in Revit is quite complicated because you've got to understand structural systems. It's a lot more complicated to model these types of little details in Revit and ArchiCAD. However, there are model in place options for both ArchiCAD and Revit that I now have to bring forward. Okay. So I just want to, in order to make this work, I just want to take you back to OKU 200's page. You would have all got an announcement about joining a group. Now, this is also quite frustrating about the new ClickUp interface. When I create these groups, it automatically creates an announcement to join a group, but it doesn't take you to the group, which is annoying. What you need to understand is in the top tab of your OKU 200, there's a groups option. You'll need to join the group there. So all of you will need to join the correct group. You're either going to be in Revit or ArchiCAD, because I have to run parallel workshops for ArchiCAD and for Revit. You have to be in the correct groups to access the content. If you're not in any group, you're going to get zeros for these workshops. So please make sure that you join the correct group and you stay in that group for the remainder of the year. Please note that you've got time to learn other software next year if required. Okay, but this is a challenge this year, so we're going to try our best to try and accommodate this, because the content that we were going to do early on, I'm going to have to scrap, just because I know not everyone's going to be able to access Formit anymore, and using the web version, if you don't have internet, you can't use it. Okay, so you need a good internet connection, so it's just making this very difficult to do. Okay, but on the plus side, you guys are going to learn ArchiCAD and Revit a lot sooner. Now, unfortunately, I don't know ArchiCAD. I'm getting someone else to assist me to build an ArchiCAD library and workflow. I will be learning ArchiCAD this year, but I've got a Revit background, so I'll be dealing with the Revit information. Okay, so it's critical by the end of this week that you all have the software installed, ArchiCAD or Revit. Okay. Please go to content again, go to lectures and workshops. Make sure that you're going to go to semester 1, week 7. Please go and follow these instructions and make sure that you get your software installed. This is critical. Okay, so please go and get the software installed. For those of you still using Formit, please, you can still keep using it, because there's some nice workflows that I can show you how to plug the stuff into Revit, for example, and I would like to demonstrate that today. I want to explain why you would want to use Formit, for example. Okay. Now, what I'm about to show you in Revit applies to ArchiCAD. You end up with the same problem. Okay. I'm just going to open up Revit very quickly. And I'm also going to go to 3D Warehouse. Okay. Now, Revit and ArchiCAD are 3D modeling software aimed or geared towards modeling buildings. They're not very good at modeling furniture. They're not very good at modeling trees. Okay, they're pretty rubbish at modeling stuff like that. They're building focused. This is a very specific tool to do a very specific job. Now, I like to show people this workflow because I think it's important to understand. So if we go to 3D Warehouse, for example, now to model a chair in Revit, and I'll show you what's very nice about this collection and why Form-it was a great tool to transfer this information into Revit. I just want to go and show you SketchUp libraries because this is quite neat. A lot of manufacturers are now making all types of, let me just go back home. 3D Warehouse, let me just go back to the beginning. I'll explain why. There's a lot of companies that make furniture and they're building big furniture libraries in Revit. So for example, this office desk in Revit, if I needed to model this in Revit, it's a lot of work because Revit's not designed to model these finicky little things. Revit's designed to model buildings. Okay, but unfortunately, when we design, we use a lot of this information in our models. Okay, I just want to show you what it looks like in 3D, for example. But there's lots of libraries, by the way. There is a lot of libraries in 3D Warehouse. Let me just go back. Let me just go back to the beginning. There's a whole library now that they're creating for like furniture. It's like a whole lot of. Okay, these are the ones I've been using. Let me just go back home again. You can drag and drop by image. That's interesting. That's quite neat. Okay, so at the moment there's 5 million models available to you. You can go to catalogs now or collections. So a lot of companies are making these models accessible through 3D Warehouse, and all of this stuff's free. If you just sign in with your Tux account, now you'll see like sofas. There's this whole company, Rika, for example. They do like all types of finishes maybe. So they will have a whole series of collections that you can go and look at. So this is quite incredible. So they're creating these libraries. There's lighting, for example. So they make these lighting models that you can go and download. You can see they've got all different types of fans. Now these are incredibly difficult to model in Revit because Revit's not. So if I open the Spotlight, for example, and I go to 3D Preview, View in 3D, I just want Revit to load in the background, and I'm just going to open up a building. This is what the third years are doing currently. Okay, now it's obviously missing on my computer. Okay, why is OneDrive not working? Never a dull moment. Okay, this is what the third years are doing. Okay, but in a nutshell, if you're getting these types of models, now to go and model this in Revit is very complicated. It's a lot of steps, it's a lot of workflows, whereas in Form-it and maybe SketchUp, for example, or Blender to model this stuff, it's a lot quicker. Okay, you don't have to worry about reference planes, parametric design. You model what you want and then you pull this in. So to do this in Revit, it's quite complicated. What we used to do in the past is I could download this model as a SketchUp file. So it doesn't matter, Collada as well, SketchUp files. So if I download this and I put this on my desktop, for example, what was great, I'm going to show you this Revit model. This is why it gets a bit complicated. If you're in Revit, because Revit's very building focused. So you're building with beams, columns, using all of these systems. Okay, to model things in place, it's very complicated. Now, I've got this model. I'm just going to open up Form-it quickly. Now, what's interesting, the web version doesn't allow you to transfer this information. Okay, so in Revit, I'm going to go and create a new family. In Revit, you need to use family, so you'll need to go and create a new family in order to bring this into your project. Pick the right category, because it'll be a lighting fixture, for example. Open that. Now, when I bring in these models, if I go to Insert, Link CAD, and I go to Desktop, you'll see that the models don't come in nicely, especially if it's a SketchUp file, and if they haven't been modeled that well, these things tend not to work that well. So I'm going to select this model, I'm going to try and link it in. Now it comes in with a whole lot of, let's go to 3D view, and I'm going to switch off line weights. You'll see that these models come in very poorly. They've got all of these lines, and then if you try and use this in Revit, it looks terrible. You can't use this information. Okay, so what we used to do was used Format. So Format was a great tool that I could quickly convert it into a format that Revit would use better. Well, so this is why we used to use this workflow. So I'm just going to say import, and I'll bring in the same SKP file. I see the scale is quite small, but you see that the model comes in nice and clean. So the glass, everything reads way better. So this model is way cleaner. But in Revit, it looks like a dog's breakfast. Okay, it looks terrible. You can't use it like this. If you had to use these multiple times in your building, yeah, it just doesn't work well. The line weights are incorrect. Okay, so typically what we used to do was we would remove this object in Format. You bring it into Format. If you needed to, you could fix things. So in Format will allow you to go and fix things a bit. So what we used to do, which was quite common, was you make all of this stuff a mesh. So you select everything. It was a great plugin, and you just say mesh all selected. Then what it does is it makes everything a mesh. Okay, so what it does is it makes everything a mesh. Then I simply save this. So I'm going to say save sketch as locally, and I'm just going to give it a light fitting. Now you've got the same problem in ArchiCAD, by the way. ArchiCAD, you're going to have the same issue. So if this is a light fitting now, and I go to Revit now, I know this is not quite relevant to what we're doing, but I'll highlight that as well. So if we go to Insert, and I go to Import CAD, and I bring in that AMX file because it understands light fitting, open. Now you'll notice that the model comes in way cleaner. Okay, let me just switch off line weights. Go to 3D view. Now you would notice that this model comes in the way it should look. No hidden lines, nothing. And now these models are very usable in Revit. So if I wanted to load this into Revit, so I'm going to say load into project, load into project. Now you have to be in a view, so let me just go to ground floor. I'm going to pull in that light fitting now, so I'm just going to go and say component. Here's my light fitting that I've just made, and I'll put it somewhere, bang. Now if I go to 3D view in Revit, you'll see that my little light fitting comes in perfectly in Revit, and it doesn't slow down the model. Okay, sorry, Revit's just gone. Let me just switch off perspective mode. Yes, I know it's on the ground floor, but I can fix that. But in essence, the link between Revit and Format was very intuitive. Vice versa, if I go to let me just get rid of the light fitting, let me remove that, and I'll switch off my section box. So for example, if I wanted to see this model, so to model the stuff in Revit, you'll need to understand Revit. It's got push-pull, you'll have to make up floor components. ArchiCAD is doing the same thing. So to model stuff very quickly, it's not that easy, because you've got to go and set up your floors correctly. For example, I just want to show you this timber beam. So to make these timber beams correctly, these are all families that have to be set up correctly, and they have got lots of parameters. You'll see if you go to left, right, these beams are driven by parameters. So to model this stuff just on the fly, it's almost impossible in Revit. Okay, there's a lot of work that goes into these models to make them work correctly. Yes, once you've got the library working, it's very quick. But to get to that point, it's weeks of work. Okay. So for example, if I want to rearrange this model quickly, what it used to allow me to do was in Massing Insight, I could say, listen here, take all this information and open it and form it for me. So now it would take this model, then in Form-it, I could continue modeling. So I just want to show you this, how this works. It might close this version and open a new one, so don't save. So let me just, there we go. Now, what's very cool was, in the past, you could see it exports that whole Revit model into Form-it. Then it allowed me on the fly to go and pull the stuff, and it made it into groups that are very usable. Yes, sometimes you could convert these into solids, but it allowed me very quickly to go and remodel stuff in here, and then I could pull this back into Revit. So if I didn't know Revit that well and I was battling to model stuff, I could go and create a whole lot of content in here very quickly, like push holes in. So in this facade, I could push a hole in very quickly. Okay, so things like that. This was quick now in Revit, but I mean in Form-it. But now in Revit, if I want to do the same thing, now it gets complicated because now you've got to understand levels. You can push and pull these things up. You can go and edit profiles, but it's not the same. Okay, it's not as intuitive. It's a lot more difficult to get used to. You can't just make open shapes. Okay, so this is all driven by levels, and you're constantly having to work with levels. Same thing with ArchiCAD. This gets a lot more difficult to use, and then walls won't join correctly. So if you pull this down, for example, yeah, things just don't work as well. Okay, unless you know what you're doing. This is very complicated to get used to in the beginning. Okay, so I want all of you to make a good decision here. I will show you different workarounds because I do have another workaround. We use Blender instead of using Form-it now. So there is another option that we can use, but unfortunately it's learning some other software which is also quite complex. So please go to the groups. Please join the appropriate group. This is very important. Please make sure that the software is installed before the end of the week because we're going to have to start working and you guys are going to be a bit behind. Your first project that you're going to be doing is you're going to have to model a timber structure that you're going to be doing for construction. Okay, so OKU and construction for the rest of the year are going to be doing, we are going to be doing what you're going to be doing in construction. I'm leading you. I'm going to show you guys how to model your structures so that you can do a much more informed decision when you start creating isometrics. Okay, you're going to have to start detailing these things. So you're going to have to start doing a lot more work in 3D now because you're going to have to create a poster for construction. You're going to have to do like a proper investigation of your structures. Okay, I just want to show you what we were doing in the past just so that you have an idea of what we build or what we're going to be building. So it's not a train smash yet, but we're just going to be using a different software. Okay, so OKU. So what we've been doing in the past, we used to use AutoCAD and Form-it together, but now it's going to be Revit primarily. Okay, so if we go to detail sections, I just want to open up the Form-it model. Let's close that one, don't save. Okay, I'm going to close Revit for now. Actually, I'll leave it open, I'll explain why. Okay, so we used to do these very, sure, why is OneDrive not working now? Yeah, it's literally stopped working. Can you believe it? Okay, everyone, my OneDrive has stopped working. That is so strange. Wow. Okay, that is very strange. Okay, I'm just going to go and get the model off the OneDrive online. So I'll just download that quickly. Yeah, sorry about that. So OneDrive has stopped working on this machine. Yeah, I see it's not working at the moment. Okay, so OneDrive. Go to My Files. My Files. Yeah, close that for now. Cancel that. Yeah, sorry guys, my OneDrive is not working at the moment, so I'll sort that out shortly. So OKU. I see it's very slow online as well, so that's interesting. Project examples, okay, 200. So let's just go and do detailed sections. Let me download the format model, which is this one over here. Download. Save as, desktop. Open file. Sure, don't know what's doing that. Or maybe Forma stopped working on here as well. Interesting. Okay, that's very strange. Okay, while that's busy thinking, the format, I'll just show you this on the web version. So format, the web version still works, by the way. Just doesn't even find it anymore. Okay, so the web version will still open the files off a local device as well, so I'll just quickly show you this as well. Just make sure that your units are correct, so you want this to be metric millimeters. Open, so I'm just going to open a local file, open sketch locally. I'm just going to open it on the web just to highlight that you can still use it. Desktop, so let's just open up. So basically what we will be doing is building a detailed section. Okay, so the whole series of workshops was leading up to building these detailed sections through your buildings that you're busy designing. Okay, so you'll see that these are quite detailed, how I've used the brickwork. Okay, so you can do quite nice little details. Then this detail you plug straight into Revit and then you document it in Revit. So for example, I'll just show you how this looks in Revit. So here's my little detail that I've created. Okay, I built this in Format based on my construction project. You see that I've got all the timber details, the roof sheeting, the coping. Okay, so I've got a coping, I've got flashing, undo that. So I've got a coping, concrete coping with a drip. I've got flashing, I've got corrugated IBR. So the workshops were designed to help you guys build these items. Okay, but we're going to have to scrap all of that. So close that for now. Now in Revit, I'll start a new project file, new, browse. Now Revit's a bit more complicated because you need access to libraries. I don't have access to OneDrive at the moment, so this won't work. So I'm just going to start a new project, new, and I'm just going to use the default template, project templates. So let me just go there. Yeah, I see even these are missing on this machine. So something's, so I'll just go to metric multidisciplinary. It won't look the same as my template that I've given all of you access to. Okay, so something's not working on here. Something's gone very wrong. Okay, let's just go to level 1. Now, Revit will start off with some basic levels. First, you just got to understand it. That's how it works. It requires levels. Okay, very important. So I'm just going to go to this level. Now I'm going to go to model in place. I'm going to create an in place component. I'm going to make this a generic model. And I'm just going to call this section for now. Because to model this section, to model that section in Revit will take a lot of work. For you in the beginning, it'll take a lot of time. You'll need to learn the interface. It's a lot of work. Okay, so we're going to do this bit by bit by bit. Okay, but in essence, I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to say, we used to use LinkCAD because it meant that I can keep on refreshing the model. So if I keep reworking this detail, I'm just going to bring it in just like this. And you'll notice that it brings in this detail. So let's go to 3D view. It brings in this detail. It brings in this detail into Revit the way it should look. Yes, there's some information that gets missing and it doesn't quite work as well, but that's easy to fix. But now you see it brings us into Revit. Now, why do we want to use Revit? if you want to document these, so if you want to, I'll just draw a quick section through this object. So what you want to start doing now is if you want to start doing documentation, now this won't work as well, unfortunately, because it's not using my template. You'll see that these things are very polluted if you don't use the right template. Okay, but what it allows me to do now is I can start documenting, so annotate. So this is where things start getting a bit more serious. Now I can go and document this. I can use dimensions. Okay, I can set the scale 1 to 100. So I'm going to make this 1 to 20. Okay, now you're going to go and document all of this information. So now you're creating drafted details of this project. Yes, you're going to have to go and add some details here. So for example, components. So filled regions, if you want to make this a material, for example, I'm going to use thick lines for this. Revit's very intuitive as well. It will select boundaries. So now I can start using all types of fills. So maybe this needs to be like a timber line. We'll switch on line weights because I want to start seeing the line weights. Okay, now we draft over this. You guys need to understand Revit is a combination of 3D modeling and drafting. So that's why I wanted to show you this workflow. I'll just show you concrete, for example, again. So here I'll go here again. Start drawing, wide line again. Here I'm just going to use the pick line tool again. So that line, 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 that line. And I want that hatch to be concrete, for example. So here you can start, yeah, so now this is set up, my library set up for you. So I'm just going to say duplicate, I'll make mine like concrete. Okay, so I want this to be concrete. I want this to be a light hatch. These are always one, press apply, press OK. Finish. Now you'll start getting concrete, you'll start getting masonry. Okay, because now we need to document our details. So you model it and then you start documenting stuff. You use your levels correctly, so this level should have been maybe to the underside of the truss, for example, and you'll see that this will also be live. These dimensions are also live now. Okay. Okay, but this should have been, so move this down, this should have been down here maybe on this level. Okay, but you guys get the idea. It in place, let me just move this down, align that to the top of, so this needs to move, unpin that, move this down to there. Okay, this guy, finish. So if we document over this, so we're doing the same exercise in AutoCAD, by the way. Okay, we're documenting things because Format's not a documentation platform. It's more just for visualization and modeling. Revit is where you go and document your information. Okay, so let me just align this to the underside of B maybe, because that needs to be a very specific dimension. Yeah, okay. All right, so in a nutshell, the purpose of this, we're going to have to rework a whole lot of stuff, so I have to apologize if there's going to be a delay in content. But please start trying to download the software. Have it installed next week. We're going to try and do our first workshop next week. Okay, so about getting to grips with the interface, and you have to start modeling some stuff as soon as possible for construction. Okay, we'll try and find another workflow that will help. But yeah, at the moment, it's a bit of a problem that we're trying to deal with. Okay, so any questions, please let me know, and good luck for the rest of the week, because I know that you've got a lot of pressure. All right, guys, good luck.